A lot of you have asked me how do I set up my loot filters, and since we have a new tournament tomorrow where we are supposed to play Spellblade, and I'm gonna be playing my Firebrand build, I'm gonna show you how do I set up my loot filters, what do I do, what stages do I go through, and what are some basic rules that I keep on all my filters. So let's open up the filter. The first thing you need to do is know what build you're gonna play, obviously, and based on that, you're gonna have to obviously create some rules. Rules that I always have on all of my build guides. I show all my uniques, sets, and exalteds, all of them, because even though you're playing a build, you never know if you're gonna drop like, you know, a unique with legendary potential, or an exalted item that you could use for the crafting system in the dungeon. You could maybe use a set on a different build. So I just always show all exalteds, all uniques, and all sets, because you never know, right? Every unique, every set, every exalted could be useful now with the legendary mechanic and the crafting in the dungeon. So that's a rule that I always have. And then I have idol rules. So I always have a rule where I show all the idols. So I would show all the idols that are in the game, just in case, you know, you never know, you might drop an idol for rogue when you're playing mage, and I don't want to miss on those. So I always show all the idols, all of them. And you know, if they're not highlighted, I just assume that they're for other builds and you can decide to skip them if you choose so. But I show all the idols always, just because I can build other characters based on that build, on this rule. But then I highlight my idols. So normally what I do is I do a rule with class-specific stuff. For example, the GG affixes, right? And you can see that I have selected all the stuff that I want from mage, right? Class-specific mage stuff. So you can see I have lightning ages, I have how you say it? I have all the stuff that is like mage related, right? Like for example, if I drop this idol, it's, you know, it's gonna be, well, it's exalted right now, so it's overrun by the rule, but it would drop as blue if it had flame ward, right? If I drop one of these idols, see, this one is not blue, but this one is gonna be highlighted because it has the lightning ages damage when you have when you've been hit, right? And I could have, I don't know, this one is also gonna be highlighted as HP, etc., right? For example, I'm gonna have, oops, it has been a bit, I didn't plan for this. Okay. So other things that I have rules where I have basically idols, smalls for defenses or things that I know I'm gonna need. For example, armor. I know that armor is gonna be something useful for this build. And you can see I have used armor on idols like this, right? Armor, 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 armor. So you know, small idols that you know they're not crucial to the build, I just highlight a bit, you know, so if I see them, it's like, oh nice, maybe I can use this when I have a bit of a slot somewhere, etc. Then I have the GG build, the GG ones, right? The GG ones are idols that have the stuff that I really, really, really want. I have this rule separately, just in case, you know, I drop an idol that has something that I really, really want. It's highlighted separately. Sometimes I go to the extent, right, of making the same build, the same rules, but I double them. And what I do is I make it so they have to have both affixes, right? And I maybe recolor them, right? But in this case, the idols are not as important, so I'm not gonna do that. But you know, you could have rules for idols with all the stuff you want, and then have a separate rules with all the stuff you want, and they need to have at least 2 of them, right? So, for example, an idol like this would be the lightning ages while you have lightning damage while you have lightning ages, and the chance to get lightning ages when hit. So this would be like a special rule, right? And I always have this rule, which is the percentage HP 1x2 idols. because they are OP for pretty much every build, and you never know if you're gonna drop a really good one. So I have that. And like I mentioned, I have the blue stuff for the class specific, you know, flame ward charges, etc. Then we go into the gear. So what I do for my gear is I make rules, separate rules for every item, right? One thing that I always do, I have leveling gear. So for example, I'm gonna probably level with Glacier. So I just do staffs, you know, I show all the staffs, any staff, doesn't matter. I show from the level that I think I'm gonna transition, I put a rule there. So this rule just automatically disappears when I'm level 60 or whatever. And then I put the highest usable level. So the game automatically shows me the highest level of staffs. I include white staffs because a white staff with like really high base damage, it's gonna be better than a yellow staff, but that is 20 levels below, right? So keep that in mind. This is just for leveling, right? But make sure you always do rules like this. Because again, if you hit level 20, you want to make sure that you see the level 20 weapons, even if they're gray, right? Even if they're blue, even if they have stuff that you don't want. So I just show all of them while leveling. And then I have just a really generic leveling rules. For example, I have one for every class, as you can see. I just highlight them kind of briefly. And you can see they're really generic, right? I have relics. I choose all the relics that I think can be useful, even if they're not best in slot. I don't really care. The implicits are not that important, right? And I select all the affixes that I think could be useful. You know, I have crit multiplier, I have resistances, I have just basic shit to level up. And I do that pretty much. I do that pretty much with every gear slot. Very basic. Then on top of that, I have a rule that is shards to shatter. So this will pink everything that is going to be useful for the end game. So my pink items are basically items that I'm not necessarily going to wear, but I'm going to harvest. Right? For example, these are things like frailty, crit avoidance, etc. You can see right now some things that I put in here are crit avoidance, like I mentioned, movement speed, chance to chill, chance to slow, armor shred, frailty, right? Very simple things like melee lining damage. I know I'm gonna use this on this build, right? I'm gonna use lining damage. I'm gonna use crit multiplier, right? You could also add attributes if you're doing a build that stacks attributes, right? And again, you can see right now that I'm using at least tier 3 of them. So, you know, if I see a pink item, I know it's gonna have at least 3 crit avoidance or 3 movement speed, etc. If you are at a moment in the game where you don't have enough, well, just put this number, you know, to 2 or to, you know, to 3, to whatever it suits you at that moment, right? And then I have a separate rule, a pink rule, where I highlight the HP, right? This is my HP stuff. And I highlight increased HP and hybrid health. So anything that has hybrid health or increased health will always be pink, doesn't matter what, doesn't matter the tiers. This is super valuable, they're pretty rare. So I just have a special rule for this. Notice that I have these rules above the yellow, because for me, these things are gonna be more valuable than the yellow. And because I wanna be, there's gonna be a bunch of yellow items showing up, but only very minor pinks. Especially the highlighted ones. So I want to make sure that the moment I see a pink item, I know it's hybrid health. I know it's increased health, and I go and I pick it up. That way, you know, when you're crafting, when you're gearing, you can see that if I go to my forge and I go to, I don't know, view materials, I go to hybrid health, right? This character is SSF. You're going to see that I have 71 hybrid healths, right? You're going to see I have increased healths, I have 90 increased healths. Right, this character was played only 4 days, so you can see that playing like this and having these very specific rules really pays off on these really rare affixes. Just because you're gonna be able to recognize them really quick, right? Then I go for the endgame rules. So you can see all these leveling rules normally finish around the level where I have access to the relic that I want to use or the item that I want to use. So for example, leveling relics I finish the rule at level 58. Why? Because the last relic that I won is level 58. So this rule works all the way toward level 58. At level 58 it disappears. Why? Because the new rule appears. My endgame relic. And you can see this works all the time. Because again, this will overwrite the yellow rule in case I'm not level 58 yet, right? And you can see now it only shows the good relic. And again, my basic loot filter for endgame is really simple. I just put the relic I won with the 4 affixes that I won. Best in slot, right? I want, for example, in my relic I want crit multiplier. I want poison resistance in particular, right? Obviously, if you are early in the game and you don't really care what resistance you're getting, you could add more or less, right? And you know, I probably have like what, frailty, right? Because it's a relic, you always want frailty, and I also have whatever mage class specific you're playing. In this case, I have level of flame ward, okay? And you can see I only have just one of them. The reason I have just one of them, because these items, these endgame items, the most important thing of them most of the time is the implicits. For example, if you go to amulets, you can see I'm only showing Bone Amulet, you know? Bone Amulet can have from 13 to 40 physical and necrotic resistance. So for me, it's more important to get a Bone Amulet with good implicits and just tier 1 of everything I won than to have a Bone Amulet that has really good tiers but the implicits suck. Because if your implicits are not good, it means your item is not going to be usable because the puzzle of resistances that you're choosing the base for is not completed. Right? If you, let's just say you're planning to cap your necrotic resistance with an ivory ring, right? And a Bone Amulet, and they both come with up to 40% resistances. Well, you need to make sure you both roll pretty high, otherwise your necrotic resistance is not going to be 75%, which is what you're aiming for. So again, I really prioritize on the implicits, and that's why my rules are really vague, you could say. And again, right now in the game, how it works, you know, you just pick up anything you see, right? And then you just go to your stash and you just type Bone Amulet, right? And it will just show all the Bone Amulets you found, and you can just quickly check what you found. And again, even an item like this is like, oh fuck, I need some health. You know, boom, boom, and you get your health, right? So I'm a bit of a hoarder, and that's why my loot filter is pretty opened. However, I do make basically a copy of these rules that I just made, and I get a bit more specific. So you can see that it's basically the same rule, but right now I want the item to have at least 3 of the things that I won, and that those things are at least at tier 12. Why do I do that? Because that way I guarantee that I'm going to be able to craft, you know, they're going to have a certain amount of forging potential where the items are going to be endgame usable. Obviously, you're not going to see too many items drop like this, just like rares, reds like this. But it can happen, you know, and if it happens, well, you can use them, and you know, it's basically a guaranteed upgrade, right? And that is pretty much my filters right now. I try to be pretty open, because especially now with Glyphs of Chaos, with all the crafting options that we have, even items that don't look good for your build at first sight can actually end up being really good. Like, you drop an item and it has like, you know, tier 3, tier 3, tier 3, tier 3 of something you don't want, and you do chaos, 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 and everything chaos into what you want. Boom, you have a good item. And you say, Lizard, what are the chances of that happening? Well, it's obviously pretty rare, but that's what the game is about, right? You need to be open to those possibilities. And if you do a loot filter that is really strict, then you're probably gonna play hours and hours without seeing anything, right? And again, I think it's good to have wide rules like this, and then the more gear you get, you start to basically disable them. For example, when I logged into this character before recording this video, I basically had all of this. Well, these disabled themselves, right? But I basically disabled all of this, and I only had these rules, right? And the idols, and that's it. So this is pretty much how I set up my idols. Again, my loot filters. Again, it's really simple for me. I don't go too crazy. I think the game is about looking at items, and I like looking at items. I like getting surprised. I like looking at items and go like, "Ooh, look at that! That's so fancy." In fact, normally I just have literally tabs of items where I just collect things that I think are cool, you know. But, oh look, throwing attack with crit multi. I could use this someday on something. I don't know. Like again, I have like tabs of just like exalted things that I found it. Look at how many exalted things, and I just keep them because I don't know. +3 to meteor, fireball. I'm playing flame riff, but I just have tabs and tabs and tabs on of just items that I like collecting, and I like looking at idols, volcanic orb idols. I don't know, you know. So I like looking at items even if I'm playing SSF because I don't know. It's great. So again, thank you guys for watching this. I know it's pretty simple, but this is how I set loot filters. These are my logic behind my rules, and so far they work. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and bye bye.